and welcome to this week's edition of Think Big. I'm your host, Akia Garnett. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am really excited because I'm joined by Len Johnson. And Len is a certified mentor for SCORE. You may have heard of SCORE. They're a nationwide organization. They help thousands of small business owners and entrepreneurs every year. They've got some amazing programs. Many of those programs are for free, and Len is going to talk about those things tonight. He's also the marketing chair for SCORE Washington, D.C., and so he'll be talking specifically about what Washington, D.C. SCORE can do for you and how you can grow your business or even launch a business better through the support services that they offer. So without further ado, hey, Len, how are you?
I'm doing great, Akia. I really appreciate this opportunity to join you this evening for this program.
Great. Thank you so much. Tell us about SCORE and the services that the organization provides.
Mm-hmm. SCORE is truly a national organization. We have a chapter in every state. Some states have a number of chapters. For example, our Washington, D.C. SCORE chapter serves Northern Virginia, the city of Washington, D.C., and Southern Maryland. But there's a chapter also in Baltimore and another one in Richmond. So throughout the country, there are actually 11,000 mentors throughout SCORE throughout the country. And our chapter has about 70 mentors.
That's amazing. I can't wait to start talking more about those mentors and how you got connected to SCORE as well. Your background led you to be able to be a SCORE mentor, a certified mentor for SCORE. Right. Tell us about that.
I was privileged that when I came first to Washington, D.C. in 72, I guess it was, I came to Washington and I got a job with a 3-person graphic design firm. And I worked in that company for 10 years. And the owner was in his 70s, and I took him to lunch and asked him what his plan was to retire. Could I buy the business? What was the opportunity? And so he said, well, let me think about it over the weekend. And so he came back to me on Monday and he said, I'll resign. I'll sell you the business on January 1st. And that worked out great for me. I ended up having, one of the challenges to buy a business is where do you get the capital to do it?
Right.
And in this case, I got a second mortgage on my house, and so I was able to write a check at the settlement table and give him his total payout. Right. But so right from the start, I had employees, I had clients, and I had work in progress. And so it made it a lot easier to make the transition. Right. Where a lot of people that are looking to start and grow a business, they're trying to figure out where they're going to get funding, how they're going to start it, where are their clients. And so in my situation, I had clients from day one. Right. And then I ran that business. Like I said, we started with 3 employees. I grew it to 15 employees. And in that process, I ended up getting a GSA schedule contract for advertising and marketing. Mm-hmm. We launched the Do Not Call campaign for the Federal Trade Commission. Yeah. We did branding for the U.S. Agency for International Development and Architect of the Capitol. So I had a portfolio of clients and contracts in the shop that had value. And then in 2009, I approached a few companies asking if they were interested in acquiring my company. And I got into negotiation and settled on one that made an offer that I thought was credible. But in that process, I had a SCORE mentor that helped look at the financial earnout potential of the deal. And with that, I had confidence that I was making a good choice. And so in that process, I went ahead, completed the transaction, and the earnout potential actually was in staying 5 years to get the value or percentage of the contracts that I brought in. Right. So that it created a revenue stream, and it gave me the opportunity to build a nest egg in that process. And then after 10 years, I said, well, enough is enough. I said, maybe I can be a SCORE mentor. Right. And so that's why I'm blessed. I've been pleased to have the opportunity to benefit from SCORE and now to give back to the small business community. It's so rewarding for me to work with small business owners and to see their dream, see them grow, right, and see them prosper.
Wow. I mean, did you know, or did you have an inkling when you came to D.C. that you wanted to buy a business and to launch it the way you did?
No, it was never an idea that I had. Mm-hmm. I had just gotten out of the service. I had been a photographer in the Army during the Vietnam era. And so when I came to Washington, all I wanted was a job. And my wife was looking for a job. She got a teacher's aide job. So I never had that dream or passion to start with. Mm-hmm. But having made the commitment of working 10 years for one business owner, and then he was at a point that I saw him looking close to retirement, that then I saw the opportunity. And it got to be a family joke. I'd come home and I'd say to my wife, guess what? And she says, oh, Mr. Todd's going to retire. I said, no, not yet. Finally, one day I was able to come home and say, yes, he's going to retire. And so it was an opportunity of a lifetime that I was so blessed to have.
Wow. Well, I've not talked to a small business owner who does not want to grow. Some of them aren't ready to grow, of course. And I think many of them know when they are ready, even if they have the desire to do so. How do you break into that conversation to help them determine whether or not they are truly ready for growth?
Well, a small business that's a startup has to have a growth plan and a vision for growth, or they're never going to succeed in business. And so in my private, and I would say this as a SCORE mentor, all of our mentoring is private, confidential conferences. And in those, I draw on my own background and give them ideas on how to really fine-tune their business plan and how to approach marketing for their small business. But it's often a case of that's a focus of the conversation. Right. And because we were a marketing company, I had some ideas on how to market. But I had one story that I think is especially relevant. When I ended up buying the business, and then I was faced with generating new business, I was a member of a professional organization that it was the Art Directors Club in Washington. And in that membership, I would go to meetings where I saw my peers. Well, one day I realized I was talking to my competitors, not to my potential clients. Right. And so in my SCORE mentoring, I often allude to this experience, and I explain to business owners that the best place to find new business and new clients is to seek out professional organizations where your clients mingle, and then make a commitment to those organizations. Get on a committee, donate your services, get to know people personally. And frankly, that's how I met you. Right. I was a member of PRSA when I had my business. Yeah,
it was great. They had a wonderful rooftop.
Oh yeah, it was a lovely evening. It was a
lovely event, and we kind of dominated the conversation.
I guess so. Well, and that's what I'm saying is it's those personal opportunities that can become business opportunities, but don't approach it in a selling mode. Right. You have to be in a receptive mode to ask questions, learn about who you're talking to, find out about what angle or what perspective they're coming from, so you can speak to their interests, not your own.
Right. I mean, how intense or in-depth does the coaching become per client that you're working with or per company that you're working with? And also, are you made aware of their most critical challenges before you're giving advice to them? How does that work?
Well, the session, I get a synopsis of what their questions are when they make the appointment. Right. But the conversation really takes paths that you can never predict. And so it really is truly an exploration and trying to find out what is it that is their burning issue. And sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's finance, sometimes it's employee situations. And so I'll ask them specifically, what is it that's on your mind? What's your agenda for this meeting? Because I don't want to drive the conversation. I'll respond and I'll probe with questions, but it's not my job to determine what the agenda is for the meeting, because they come with topics that they want to discuss. Right. But I tell my clients that when I meet with them, especially in the first meeting, I'll say I'll be your biggest champion and cheerleader and your biggest taskmaster. Right. And so while I'm discussing their issues with them, I'm taking notes, and I said, when I make a checkbox, that's an action for you. Right. And I'll follow up with a summary of these so that they know what is their responsibility. Because clients can make an appointment once a week, once a month, or twice a year, whatever suits their need. But the point is, I explain and make it clear to them, I'm looking for progress. If we come back and talk about the same thing over and over, we're not getting your company further down the road.
Right.
And so I'm motivated to see you succeed, and it's important that you take on the tasks that can bring you to the road for success.
And this is all for free?
It's all for free.
And they can have as many coaching sessions as they'd like. Huh?
Yeah,
as
exactly.
often as your schedule permits.
Mentors operate on different days. I happen to mentor on Thursdays in Alexandria. But in our chapter, what I encourage people to do is seek out a mentor. And on the chapter website at washingtondc.score.org, there's a link to request a mentor. Mm-hmm. And you can also look at the bios of the mentors. And we have mentors that are 3-star generals. We have mentors that worked in Northrop Grumman defense contractors. We have mentors that have owned real estate. Yeah. And so they come from all different backgrounds. And the beauty of that is that if I get into a situation where one of my clients has an issue that I haven't maybe encountered in my own history of my business, I'll say, this is a person to contact. We can co-mentor, or you can make a separate appointment with that mentor. So they have an expertise that, for example, one of my best stories about that is that one of our SCORE mentors owned a furniture store in Arlington. He got very savvy, and then he owned other business properties. But he was a mentor that really understood leasing and how to negotiate a good lease. And in his situation, he had a SCORE client of his that was opening a store, and it was a retail store, and it was going to be in Georgetown. And he was in discussion with the building owner, who had said, well, you want to rent this space, these are other terms that you have to abide by. Mm-hmm. And this is the lease that we expect you to sign. So he brought that lease back to the SCORE mentor, and the mentor reviewed it, and he says, no, you need a broker or an agent that is representing you. You don't want to work with the broker from the owner of the building, because he's representing the owner's interest. Right. You need somebody to represent your interests. And so he did that, and then the mentor also said, look, they've asked or told you are liable and responsible for the build-out, and this is an older building in Georgetown. It's maybe got electrical issues. It might have fire hazard issues. Right. You're going to be responsible. He said, no, you make those all the responsibility of the company that owns the building, and then you'll pay what's appropriate in terms of the deal. But it was that little bit of advice that really set him on a path so that he didn't get caught in a quagmire that could have put him out of business in his first year. Wow,
that's really helpful. I'm sure that a small business owner really appreciated that foresight, that knowledge there. I mean, that, like you said, it could have really put him in a real pickle.
Well, he ended up being one of the clients of the year for our chapter.
Wow.
So he succeeded in his business.
Okay, and I know that people are tuning in because they want to know about growth. In particular, when you are discussing growth, or working with small business owners, are you dividing growth into various areas such as revenue or workforce or operations, or does that all go hand in hand in your conversations?
Well, it depends where they are in the business cycle. If they're a startup, you really are not in a growth mode until you actually open the doors and start looking for business. Mm-hmm. Some people that are further along, they're in a situation where they are faced with more business than they can handle, and so that they say, well, what do I do about hiring good employees? Mm-hmm. And in that situation, it may be a case where I suggest find subcontractors that can help you in the early stage of your business so you don't add overhead of staff. It makes it flexible about how you structure your costs. So it depends on the situation and the business cycle of where somebody is in their growth cycle, but it really is tailored to the individual's business situation.
Right. I mean, and so are you seeing any new trends with companies that you're helping? I mean, there's new types of companies, especially with the technology space now. What are you seeing in terms of the trends and the types of companies that you're helping today?
Well, there are often companies that have a tech background and a tech focus.
Right.
There are people that have a social media focus. Mm-hmm. And so that in some cases I may refer them to another mentor for something that I haven't experienced, or to a outside contracting source where they may need professional support. So it depends on the nature. When I come across a company that really is a technology company, because my own background was not in technology and I don't claim to be tech savvy, then I will refer them to a SCORE mentor that really has come from a technology company and can be of help to them.
So what you were saying earlier in terms of sometimes working hand in hand with another mentor, you might still support them in some of their more general challenges in marketing and allow someone else to kind of step into that equation and help them on the technical side.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, do you all use like a growth percentage in terms of, what a company should be seeing across industries of growth per year?
Well, in the small business realm, I wouldn't say there are cookie cutter formulas that refer to. It really is an analysis of where they are currently in the process, and frankly, they should have a business plan. And that kind of lays out what their first steps are to start that business. In the business plan, there's a marketing section and there's a finance section. So the business plan is going to be the roadmap. And if a client is a new client and they're really starting a business, they really haven't gotten past the opening the doors. Right. And so they're at a startup phase, not in a growth phase. And so it's really important to recognize where you are in your business cycle to understand where your business opportunities are and where to place your focus.
When it comes to the businesses and where they are in the business cycle, on average, where does SCORE meet those business owners?
I would say maybe 80% of our business counseling are with new clients, with new startups.
New startups.
Yeah. And then, like I say, they're certainly can have repeated meetings, and so that we are eager to see them grow. But that's often where we're getting this. The first encounter is with the startups. Some people find us through the SCORE website. Other people find us through the SBA because we're a partner with SBA. That we get a little bit of funding from the Small Business Administration. And so often people are looking to become a 8A certified company, and we have workshops about that. But it really, the referrals often come from different sources, and they find us from different avenues.
And you mentioned earlier when some companies just aren't ready for the growth, or they may grow a little too fast, faster than what they anticipated. Do you have any stories of someone maybe growing out of business or coming close to it?
Well, unfortunately, I had a client that had been successful. They had some good revenues and some great accounts, and then they, I believe, overextended in terms of buying new technology and equipment. And then they became somewhat underwater because the contracts didn't continue to roll in at the pace that they had hoped they would. So they had liabilities on paying for equipment that they had bought. And they couldn't return it. And so they ended up getting into a situation that they had to decide, could they sell it, or were they going to close it, or what their situation is. So that sometimes it ends up in just closing the business if they've really overextended themselves and can't make a go of it.
So you've seen that then where, wow.
Yeah, I have. And that's the minimal. I mean, unfortunately, that's not the traditional way, the path that we see with our clients. But reality is that it happens.
Yeah, it happens. How long on average does SCORE work with businesses?
What our motto is for the life of your business.
Oh, wow.
So that's where we start with businesses that are startups, and we work with growing businesses. And then, as in my case, it was an exiting or selling a business, so that it can be the life of your business.
And I love the statistic that SCORE has out there. Small business owners that receive 3 or more hours of mentoring report higher revenues and increased growth. Can you share anything about that?
I don't have statistics specific to clients that I can share, but I do have confidence, as SCORE National has done surveys and tests for that, and then they also have data that they collect on how many business startups that have been started in a year and how many employees those businesses hired, so that there's data on the SCORE national website, score.org, that really lists some of the results that mentors across the country have had.
Wow. I mean, do you all have a chance to network amongst yourselves as mentors as well, since you said, what are there, 70,000 across the country?
Well, we do, once a month, we meet as a chapter, and we have a chapter meeting, and there we'll share stories, and we'll get reports on how many mentoring sessions we had, and actually, from a first session, the client is encouraged to answer a survey, and I always ask them to respond as honestly as they can, and so that we'll get feedback about from the clients that have been mentored in a month. And it's always good. Also, we have at the chapter meetings with the mentors from the chapter come together, where we get to hear more about what other mentors are doing, what kind of challenges they're facing, what kind of recommendations they've given. And also we bring in some speakers sometimes, some from a bank or lending institution, or from like a Kiva Zip for startup funding, like that. And so we'll sometimes have presenters to our chapter meetings that also extend our knowledge of the resources available to offer our clients.
Great. Thank you, Len. Stay right there. We'll be right back with Len Johnson from SCORE, and he's going to be giving more tips on how to grow your business.
The Black Student Fund has been around for more than 50 years, and it served as an important resource for many, many families in the area who may not have always felt welcomed to independent schools. For school heads and administrators like me, it's a bit of a party and celebration coming to this, not only seeing other school personnel, but to meet so many families, some of whom have traveled from a distance, and I think they know that this is the one fair where they're going to see all the schools in the area.
Independent schools are such a wonderful resource for all the families, but particularly for families of color who may not have necessarily access that we need them to have. So this is a place where you can literally see every kind of education possible in the independent school world. So we have to give everyone an equal playing field. Black Student Fund allows us to do that.
We provide more insight into the admissions process, which has become more complicated than 50 years ago, so that families understand what they're going to have to do to actually apply to schools, complete the testing that's required for admission to the schools, and to position themselves for the financial aid process.
What I'm trying to get out of it is just basically making sure that I can give him better than what I had when I was growing up, and giving him a better start and the best education that I can give them all.
Luke is a special kid. He's pretty advanced, so we were looking for something that's affordable that we could get him in.
Today is a day when people learn that there is hundreds of millions of dollars of financial aid that's given out by these schools. Today is a day of people making connections about their dream for their kids.
I would say that the Washington, D.C. area may have some of the most diverse independent schools in the country, and I think there's a direct link with the Black Student Fund. I think it's been transformative for many individuals, but also for the schools.
Hi, I'm Akia Garnett with Think Big. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're here with Len Johnson, and he's the marketing chair for SCORE in Washington, D.C. SCORE is a national organization. He's also doing some great things by being a certified mentor with SCORE, and you get to work with small business owners all over the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, right? Do you have any growth stories, good or not, that you can share with?
One of my favorite stories is that I had a fellow that had just gotten out of college, and he has an autistic brother, And his goal was to start a business that his brother, who's autistic, could work in, because often it's difficult to find employment opportunities for people with autism. And so in this case, he had done his research of his business, and so he started with a business concept when he first came to me. Mm-hmm. And he explained to me that he had found a company called Freight Farms that takes recycled shipping containers, and they outfit them with plumbing, with electricity, with air conditioning, and racks so that they can grow produce inside the shipping container. And I'd never heard of this. And frankly, our mantra is you never challenge and tell somebody it's a dumb idea.
Right.
But it wasn't a dumb idea at all, but I was puzzled by it because I never heard of it. I didn't understand it at the beginning. So I probed him more, and it wasn't that he had dreamed up the idea of putting the hardware in the shipping container. He had found a company called Freight Farms that he could buy the shipping container from that had all of the equipment in it. And so he then made a commitment to buy it. He did get a loan to put the down payment on it and to get the equipment he needed. And then he started his own marketing, and he had been in touch with George Mason University. And so he showed me his business plan, and so I reviewed that with him. And then I also reviewed his website and made suggestions on how he could improve the website, and then also reviewed his logo and his marketing materials. So when he said he had an appointment to meet with George Mason University, and they have a program for special needs kids. And so they have a commitment to that mission. And he also saw an opportunity to potentially hire some kids from the university as interns in his business as well. So he made a presentation to them, and they were so impressed with his business model and his goal to support the autistic community. He then went on to have the opportunity. They introduced him to Sodexo, who was the food service provider for their dining halls. Mm-hmm. He met with them, made the presentation. They said, "We love your idea. We'll buy all the produce you can grow."
Wow.
So from day one, he had a market for his produce.
That's awesome. You know, that's an example earlier of different types of industries, such as the agribusiness. I mean, and that's becoming more and more popular now, where you've got entrepreneurs who are going into lines of businesses that, you know, people might not be as familiar with, so having to have someone like you help them fine-tune the marketing and make it make sense, especially considering you didn't understand what it was about in the beginning. So that's great. Can you give another tip, the next big thing that small business owners can do?
Well, I want to give you a couple other success stories that I think are relevant.
Okay.
And actually, I would say to prove the success of Zaponic Farms, in 2016, it was selected in a national competition as the award winner for the Small Green Business of the Year for the nation. And so that was really a feather in his cap. Another, and these actually are on the SCORE website. You can look at the success stories on washingtondc.score.org. But another client was from another mentor, and they started a company called Barkley. Mm-hmm. And Barkley was a dog walking app. And so, again, this is a very unusual business concept.
Yeah.
But they had this idea that people that have pets sometimes work late. They can't get home to feed the dog, and so that the dog, there might be a problem when they get home. And so they felt like there was a demand to have dog walking on demand.
Right.
And so they created an app that people could register, much like Uber, that you could call for a service on so you wouldn't have to schedule it in 3 months in advance.
Right.
If you were working late and you'd already signed up with this organization, they had a lockbox on your door, much like a real estate agent has, with the key to your house so that they can get access. And so
So this is like the person who's working late but didn't know it.
Yeah.
They're just not able to get home to walk the dog. Or that's great.
And even if somebody was going away on vacation, took couldn't take the pet with them and they didn't want to board the pet, they could arrange to have somebody come in and feed the dog and walk the dog for a week or a couple weeks or however they scheduled it.
Right.
But the app was what was unique about it. And they also were the award winner for the client increasing the number of employees because they had all kinds of people that applied for the app that wanted to be dog walkers. And they became employees. They were contractors to the company, but it gave them employment opportunities and revenue opportunities.
Yeah.
So it was a win-win. And they started in Washington. It wouldn't surprise me if I haven't followed their success, but I wouldn't be surprised if they'd extended their company and to other jurisdictions as well.
Well, like you said, it sounds like the Uber model to me.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Right.
And a third client of the year was a woman-owned small business from our chapter, and it was two African-American women that had started a business creating greeting cards, gift wraps, and but all original designs that they were doing. And so it turned out that they had some really quality designs. They made a presentation to the African American Museum, and they have now gotten into their gift shop as a vendor for the museum.
That's awesome.
And so that, again, is a great success story that we just are so excited to see that kind of entrepreneurship succeed and flourish.
Wow. I mean, and you know what? You have won several awards in your career in marketing and the great work that you've done in advertising for the small business owners that are also winning awards. Are you helping them to leverage those after they've won them?
We encourage them to use social media to create awareness. For our SCORE clients, it's on our website. We also did some promotion when they were receiving the award to get greater recognition for their award. And so we also, though, encourage them. This year we had, again, Chapter of the Year clients, and in Twitter and Facebook we posted those award winners to give them additional exposure as well.
Right. How do you help those who might have that shoestring budget and may not have money to market or just feel like they're struggling and not even knowing where to start with creating a budget?
One thing I would encourage any entrepreneur that is trying to solve the marketing issue is to take advantage of the workshops that SCORE offers, because our marketing workshops are excellent. And we've got some that are in the marketing area. They cover email marketing, social media marketing, referral-based marketing. Right. So they're very focused. And all of those could be part of a marketing plan. But it depends on the type of business you have. You may be going into government contracting, and referrals may not be the best source for your business. So other ways to make those connections might be appropriate. But the marketing workshops that we offer are really a great bargain and valuable. They're all-day workshops, or some are half-day, but they're hugely beneficial to the clients.
And a phenomenal fee, right?
For the half-day workshops, they're $30. For a full-day workshop, it's $60. But it's a good investment of your time and money.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any other success stories you want to share? Or, I mean, I'm really enjoying listening to the ones you've already shared. Those are great.
Well, like I say, the national website of SCORE.org has national stories as well, not limited to our chapter's website. But what's exciting to me is they come from all different kinds of industries. They're from retail. They're from government contracting. They're from marketing companies. They're from technology companies. Right. So that the opportunities are limitless. Right. It's just limited by the imagination you have. But something that I would say that's important in choosing what business you go into is that it's best that you have some knowledge, and so that you're not trying to learn the business, that you have some experience working in a business or have relatives, or it's been a family business, or whatever the connection is, so that you're not reading a textbook to try and figure out how to be a real estate agent or open a brokerage company or whatever it is, that you have you're prepared to do the business and execute on the business before you try writing a business plan for a business that you are doomed to fail if you don't understand the business yourself.
Right, and it's similar to the model that you had, right? I mean, you were a professional in your area of expertise, and you were able to buy into, that, and that's partly why you were able to just be up and running right away.
It made a huge difference in my success because there was, like I said, clients in the house under the tent, and it was then a case of growing the business.
Do you see small business owners leaving growth opportunities on the table?
Well, the problem becomes that often they don't focus on marketing, and the marketing is really critical to the growth of a business. And so one of the key things that is important about marketing is to market to your best customers first. Right. They're already sold. If they're people that you're doing business with, maybe you need to create a loyalty program. Maybe you need to use them for referrals for social marketing. Whatever it is, that it's best to leverage the contacts you already have. Then look to build your network. And sometimes I'll tell people about networking. Depending on the type of business they're in, I've even said go to meetup groups.
Right.
And forget about buying the drinks, but go to a meetup group that's relevant to your business, and that you might find people that have an affinity to what you offer or can share experiences. The other thing that I would also encourage people to do is look beyond. I mean, sometimes a business owner is limited to be what they can handle in terms of their business. Quite honestly, in my own situation, I had grown. My own background was graphic design, and then we became a marketing company. But when I got my first big government contracting opportunity, I read the RFP, and I knew that I could do part of it, but I couldn't fulfill the whole request for proposal.
Right.
Now, this goes back to where I said networking, and I was a member of the International Association of Business Communicators. And so I had gone to a luncheon where Sheila Tate would presented, and she was talking about how her company, Powell Tate, did the awareness campaign and the celebration for the White House Centennial. So I thought of her first when I got a request for proposal to create a centennial campaign for the wildlife refuges. Right. So I thought of Sheila first, and I called her and I said, Sheila, I have this request for proposal. It needs a public relations component. You're a PR company. You've done centennial campaigns. Would you be interested in partnering and being a subcontractor to us? And the company, Powell Tate, Jody Powell was Jimmy Carter's press secretary. Sheila Tate was Nancy Reagan's press secretary. So they had political connections. But the point was, she said, we'd love to partner with you. We don't have a GSA schedule. Now certainly they do, but at the time they didn't. Right. And so I said, well, I need you to write the PR part of the proposal, because we don't have that expertise, but obviously you will do all the work that comes under that PR umbrella. So they were happy to write that part of it. And in that process, frankly, I learned more about how to write a PR proposal because I learned from an expert by partnering with that expert. And at the end of the day, I think actually, there's one part of that story that I think is worth telling, is when we went to do the preliminary presentation. It was because we were a marketing company, the government wanted to meet us, and so we had prepared a little video that we were going to show about the refuges. And so we're setting up the projector, getting ready to start the presentation. But Jody Powell, who was Jimmy Carter's press secretary, he was over there, and the people in the room started asking him. You see, Jimmy Carter, he was a duck hunter, and he started talking about how he duck hunts on the refuges. So he got on their wavelength before we even turned on the projector, and they knew that he knew their wildlife refuges. And I have to believe that sealed the deal before we even finished the presentation, because he was such a charming fellow and knew so much about the refuges that's also an important aspect of making a sales pitch, is know your client, understand them, do your research and homework before you try and pitch them, and so that you're qualified to answer their questions.
Right. when you're working with small business owners, what do you think is stopping the majority of them? Is it the marketing? Is it the lack of capital? Is it the lack of being, experienced in the industry where they are?
Well, it's all of those, but capital is a big barrier. A lot of people, they're looking for funding, and they think that they're going to get startup funding.
Right.
And basically, it's important that you have at least 3 months of capital in the bank that you can live on, because you're not going to have business from the day one, and in 6 months is even better. But some people think that they're going to get a loan for the entire startup cost. It's very unlikely. Banks and lenders want to see some level of experience and history and a financial statement that shows that you have the wherewithal and staying power to survive that first 6-month period when you're trying to find new clients. So capital is a big issue. Marketing is a challenge, because what happens in small businesses is the owner becomes all things, all hats. They have to execute the business, they have to plan the business, they have to do the marketing, they have to do the accounting, and that's the challenge. Now, in my situation, I was fortunate because we were a marketing company. We knew how to market ourselves, but at the same time, it was a challenge in terms of the getting the new clients and building that network.
Right.
And when I talk about networking, I also talk about that situation of looking for how you can partner with companies to fill the gaps that you have. Right. And that was the case I did with the government proposals, was finding successful partners that had credibility that could extend our capabilities.
And then you also walk into those potential partnerships with something to offer them as well. Right. I mean, it's in that part. I think some small business owners and entrepreneurs, especially those that are new to networking, may not understand that part of the equation. That it's kind of not gimme, but
exactly.
It's kind of saying, here's what I have. What can we do with this?
Exactly. Yeah, it's important that it's a win-win for both parties.
Right.
The other thing I stress about marketing, and this is something that doesn't take a lot of time to work out, but it takes a lot of thought. And that's to develop an effective elevator speech. And what I talk about in elevator speech is what you do, who you do it for, and what's in it for me. So when you're talking to me, I want to know not what success you're going to have by me working with you.
Right.
It's how are you going to make me successful.
Right.
And that's what I call the WIFM, is what's in it for me.
Yeah.
And so in your elevator speech, it shouldn't be so rote that it's the same thing for all people. Right. It has to be that you have done some research about who you're meeting with, or that you start a conversation to learn enough about the person you're talking with that you can tailor your responses to what their business needs are, what motivates them, what their goals are. So by understanding that, you can be more responsive, be on their wavelength, and you can speak to what's in it for them.
How do you have any favorites, clients that you've worked with?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that was most rewarding was the launch of the Do Not Call campaign. Yeah. It was great when it first was launched because it really worked, but it's important that people learn that Congress made themselves exempt, and fundraisers and researchers were exempt, so that's why you can still get bombarded. Right. But another was the Department of Veterans Affairs. Having been a veteran, I was a veteran-owned small business.
Oh, thank you for your service.
Thank you. But it allowed me to have, in the government sector, to be a veteran-owned small business, which gave me opportunities to work on the military child and youth awareness program, where they were launching a new program. And so we were offered the opportunity to bid on that contract, and we won it. And that was, again, one of the highlights of my business career, was working on that program.
Right. I mean, getting on the GSA schedule is it's a major goal for many small business owners. How was that process for you, just getting to it?
Again, I was fortunate. I had, at first, GSA was already a client of mine, and they were just establishing the GSA schedules. And so they said, Len, if you want to continue working with us, you need to get on a GSA schedule. And I was fortunate that I had a fellow working for me who was our studio manager. He had done this for another company before he worked with us. And I said, can you write this response to get us on the schedule? And he said, sure, I've done it before. I think we can get on a GSA schedule.
Right.
And so he wrote that, and then I would contribute to it. But quite honestly, at that point, it was when GSA was starting the schedules. It was a lot easier to get on a GSA schedule. But there's a fallacy. A lot of people think, well, they got to get a GSA schedule. The point is you've got to have been in business 2 or 3 years. I don't remember now the limitation, where you have past performance with commercial clients. Mm-hmm. If you're a startup, they don't want to talk to you because they see you as a risk. Mm-hmm. They want to work with people who are proven successes. And so there's this misconception that a GSA schedule is a ticket to a government contract.
Yeah.
Well, frankly, one of the SCORE workshops is how to write a proposal, a government proposal, but also how to get on GSA schedule.
Yeah.
We offer workshops about that as well. But there is the misconception about that it's easy to get on, and but in my own mentoring, that's often how I approach people that are trying to sell to government.
Right.
I'll kind of show them how to use tools that are open to anybody, the Federal Business Ops, as example, the website there, and how to find business opportunities in the government sector. And I'll show them how to search to find out what their competitors' rates are on GSA eLibrary. I mean, there's a lot of wealth of knowledge there about how to tap into the government market, having been there, and that's something that I think can be learned in some of our workshops as well.
So when you took over business, when you bought it, and then when you left, what was the major difference there?
Well, the big difference when I bought the business, we had no government work at all. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was a cycle to the company. When I bought it, we had primarily education associations as clients, and they were great clients. The only problem was they generally didn't have large budgets.
Right.
Then I moved to trade associations, and we worked with American Iron and Steel, American Footwear, the Food Marketing Institute, National Association of Broads, a whole lineup of professional trade associations. And that changed our whole business model, and we started working with larger clients. But then when I saw the opportunity to get a GSA schedule, that shifted our model again. But it's important you're not so beholden to any one client.
Right.
Because if you have a guerrilla client, it leaves one day, it can kill you.
Yeah.
And so it's important that you really spread your eggs in many baskets so that you can
kind of diversify.
Right? It's critical.
Yeah, I mean, not just on clients, but like you're having that great balance between commercial and public. It's also important, you know, especially if you're wanting to be, you know, competitive in the commercial space.
Yeah.
Got to be able to show it, and vice versa for the government space.
And I'll say that when I sold the business, we had contracts that had 2 to 3 years of life on the contract.
Right.
So there was the potential of there were some contracts that we were already working on in progress that had value. Others that you knew you would be renewed. So there was a pipeline of business. And so it was more secure business, and it was more projectable. Right. And that's why I was fortunate that it was a business model that allowed me to have an earnout that gave me the opportunity to retire.
You know, we need to have you back to talk about acquisition because, you know, even that and the clean bookkeeping that's required in order to sell your business, especially when you've got government contracts, is so important. And I think that, you know, if companies are launching or small business owners are launching and they're thinking, I might want to sell this one day, you need to know that in advance that, you know, the bookkeeping requirements are very stringent.
That's a good point because it's when you go through that process of selling a business, you open the tent.
Everything.
And you had I was photocopying every file in my file cabinet. Contracts that I had, contracts that copies of proposals, our client list, all kinds of data that was into that process. And so it's important that you're very thorough and detailed in your record keeping.
So what I'm taking away from this conversation, Len, is that networking is so critically important. Get out there and make sure you have a great and polished elevator pitch. Yeah. Don't make it too stoic or, you know, too scripted that it really is too generic and doesn't appeal to anybody. I got that from our conversation. I also got that SCORE has a tremendous amount of not only free services, but also the workshops that are for a nominal fee. You've got some that are half day and some are whole day, and those are all on the website. And I'm taking away from this, you know, how to build that pipeline of projects and to be diligent over that business development process, so that you can grow. But then being vulnerable enough to reach out to a coach, reach out to SCORE to see if someone can help you when you may be in trouble or just not know where to go next.
Well, and I really would encourage anybody that's listening, that's wherever you are in your business cycle, to seek out a SCORE mentor. On our Washington, D.C. chapter site, you can actually read the bios and pick a mentor, or you can request a mentor by zip code if you want to have a mentor in Maryland or in the D.C. or Virginia. And reach out and you indicate in your request if you want a mentor by name or by zip code, and find somebody that meets your interest. And the fact is, you're not locked in. Right. If you have a bad experience and it doesn't go well, you can always go to a different mentor and get a different perspective. And the mentoring is all free. It's what I like to say, it's the best kept secret that should be shared. So I encourage all of you to share our secret. Get a mentor.
I love it. Now, any final thoughts you want to share with our audience, Len, before we go?
The one other thing I would encourage people to do is think about a workshop. We've got a brochure that we have that's online. You can download it, that has all the workshops that we have on marketing, starting a business, financing, social media. And there's a calendar, and some workshops are given once a month, some workshops are given once a quarter. But I definitely encourage you to seek out what the resources are on the local chapter website.
Great. And that website again, Len,
is washingtondc.score.org.
Thank you so much, Len, for being here and for sharing all of this information with us on SCORE. I am a fan of SCORE, and just to know that those free services are available and all the other teaching services are available and that you're partnered with SBA, so we know it's really authentic and just legitimate and just a helpful resource, especially when I've been there. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm also a former small business owner. It's not easy. And so for organizations like SCORE that exist, I just salute SCORE. I salute you for being a leader at SCORE. And I thank you again for being on Think Big.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have this opportunity to speak to your network. And I hope you all will take advantage of some of the nuggets that we've shared today.
Awesome. This is Think Big. I'm your host, Akia Garnett. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.